With regards to that plan, what process is your department currently going through in order to determine the fate of projects that appeared in last year's government plan?
Okay, could I hand you over to Richard to run you through the work we've done there, please? Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Minister. Within CSP3, which was around sustaining a vibrant economy, and also covered other elements like our international identity, there's an investment going in of about 19.3 million, I think is the figure for 2021 in the government plan as is currently structured, and that rises through 2022 and 23 to a total of 23.5 million. Of course, all of that was pre-coronavirus, and there may be the requirement for additional interventions to be made around fiscal stimulus and possible other long-term economic renewal measures. So there's a substantial amount of work in the department to deliver on those current government plan initiatives, whilst at the same point reviewing those in the context of a halt, defer or reduce strategy to determine if those are still fit for purpose given the changed times, and indeed whether the flight path on some of those initiatives around proposed spending remains appropriate to that change in circumstances. There will be very little that we would look to add as direct bids into the government plan, I think, at this stage in terms of having sufficient detail for 2021. There's, I think the Chair mentioned the financial services aspect of the Minister for External Relations portfolio and some thoughts there. We recognise the need to invest further into Jersey business so that they can help to give first stage advice and ongoing advice both to business startups and to more mature businesses around their business management, their financial management, their wider obligations as employers, and supporting their journey towards growth. And then there's also some work that we will need to do around long-term telecoms infrastructure, given some of the changing attitudes internationally towards certain vendors of telecoms equipment, and also thinking about how the island might at some future point deploy a 5G telecoms network, all of which sits in the Minister's portfolio.
Okay, that's very helpful, and you've outlined a considerable number of very appropriate and interesting topics. But if push comes to shove and ministers are asked to squeeze their budgets, because obviously this department has seen some considerable growth over the last 2 years, how will the department filter that decision-making process and decide what its priorities are out of these many good and laudable aims?
I think that's what I would pass to the Minister, yes.
Yeah. Sorry. So I think if I can ask members to cast their mind back to the last round of savings, which was started from 2014, and the Economic Development Department, I think delivered the second highest percentage of savings in relation to its budget. We managed to shave almost 20% off our budget at that stage. What that left us with was a slightly smaller structure, and during that period we saw a number of vacancies created, not created, but a number of jobs vacated and not refilled. So that left some gaps in our resource. For the last probably 2 to 3 years, we've had a very small team of officers, including Dan, Darren, Ian, and some others. Some of the others now have moved on to other departments within the state. So that left us with a very, very small a team of officers doing a huge amount of work, for which I thank them. So what I've asked Richard to do, and what's happening is that we need to refill those positions. We're not creating extra posts, but we cannot continue to run with so many vacancies, not least because I think there's going to be a huge increase in the requirement of the department as we first of all move towards becoming an independent department, which was the plan. That's still on track. So that means we're not looking to make too many more savings in staff, because actually we've been running at a very low level for such a period of time. We've already returned some monies this year for projects where recruitment has been delayed. So I just wanted to make that point, that we need to fill our vacancies so we can deliver on the work, some of the important work that you've questioned us on today.
Thank you, Minister. I'm afraid I'm going to cut in at that point because I'm very conscious of the time, and without wanting to prolong this questioning period, I would just like to make the point that, of course, it's your department who is responsible for the productivity review, and of course everything starts at home. So we could potentially push this back to you and suggest that it's down to your department to be more productive and to prove that that productivity is possible, and you should be at the forefront of achieving more with less. But we will perhaps move on in the interest of time. I have a couple of quick questions about travel, in particular the Montreal Express and the suspension of those ferry crossings. Do you have a particular concern about that?
Okay, so I just have to respond to your previous comment about productivity within the department. As you know, productivity in the economy is measured by the output of businesses, business profits added to the compensation of employees. I think if you applied that calculation to my department, it would probably be right up there as one of the most productive departments in the public sector. So I'm going to be a little bit defensive on that, but actually the point on delivering productivity in the economy is taken, and that is a priority for us, and we're very aware that we need to deliver on that. In relation to Montreal Express, it's not surprising, but it is very disappointing that they can't. They've chosen not to operate. I think it's in relation, quite simply, to the demand. There's not a great demand. The French are perhaps for day trips. You know, the testing regime here is not actually an incentive for people to visit on a day trip. And of course, we're seeing the landscape around us changing almost on a daily basis as numbers as the virus has increased in jurisdictions very close to us. We have a strong relationship with Montreal Express, and there's a strong desire from them and us to get them operating again as soon as possible. But I suspect, being realistic, we're not going to see too much activity until next spring, but let's just wait and see.
Do you have any indication of the impact that the travel protection measures are having on visitor numbers to the island at this stage?
They're having, well, they're fulfilling two things actually. I think that the measures we have are sensible, and the fact that we've had them in place for some time now, and we're still seeing very, very low levels of the virus in the community. But the level of testing is not conducive to growing numbers very, very significantly, which is probably right under the current circumstances. But on the other hand, I think firstly, most importantly, they've allowed islanders to travel to see families and families to return to the islands. And from a tourism perspective, they've allowed for some tourists, so the tourism sector are doing some business, but they're not prospering. I think the move that the states have allowed and followed will allow tourism and many other industries to survive and to be here for the recovery.
Thank you. How is ferry travel performing on both the northern and southern routes?
I think this is an opportunity for me just to single out Condor for their exceptional attention to detail on board. We've had, although I haven't experienced it myself, family members and friends, and I've had a lot of communication from members of the public to say they've been extremely impressed with the way Condor are handling passengers and cars. I want to publicly thank them for that. There is a suppressed demand, and again we're seeing on both routes. I think the majority of the take-up is from islanders who need to travel either north or south for various personal reasons. And that has provided reasonable business for Condor. But when I say that, I mean, I think Condor is still hugely challenged as a carrier because of the pandemic. So first and foremost, I think it's been helpful for locals, but then there is, I think, stronger interest from tourists from the northern route than there is on the southern route, given the current circumstances.
Well, yes, I was just about to ask whether there's likely to be any change in travel restrictions to France, given the potentially changing circumstances there with the traffic light system.
Yeah, I mean, as of earlier today, the rate 100,000 in France was up to about 23.5, I think. If that hits 25, or then they will go onto our amber list, which means visitors and residents returning from France will be subject to a different criteria. They will test on arrival, self-isolate for 5 days, and then have to undergo a second test. And it looks like, unfortunately, France is heading towards an amber rating on our traffic light system, and that will have quite a serious impact on the transport link to France.
Thank you, Minister. I'll pass over now to Deputy Mary.
Thank you, Senator, and good morning, everyone. Yes, my area of questions relates to what might be termed sports-related matters, which...
That's very much at the heart of the work we're doing with Economic Council, Economic Recovery Group. So I can't give you a full answer to that right now because it's a work in progress. Of course, the target has to be to return the economy to that prosperous state that we're in as quickly as possible. But I think we also want to embrace the opportunity to look closely at certain sectors, as I mentioned previously, and we mustn't waste the opportunity to try and grasp the potential for productivity gains moving forward.
Thank you. The FPP, Fiscal Policy Panel, also states that both the level of trend GVA and future trend growth are sensitive to a number of factors. In particular, the structure of Jersey's economy following the recovery, the short and medium-term prospects for migration, and the outlook for benchmark interest rates. I'm not going to ask you to comment on future interest rates. Would you mind describing to the panel your views on the likely future structure of Jersey's economy and the short or medium-term prospects for migration to the island?
I don't think we're going to see a great change in the structure of our economy. I think financial services we'll see developments, we'll see innovation in those areas. We'll see businesses and organisations are always looking to develop new products, and I don't see that changing too much. I do see that we'll. And this is why education and skills is one of the key aspirations, because as technology improves and we start to see more uptake of AI, for example, we're going to see some jobs displaced. But I don't believe that will lead into a reduction in jobs. I just believe it will lead to a change in jobs, and we've seen it. We've seen it in the past. We've seen it when businesses. That 30-year period when businesses moved into computerization, the predictions were that thousands and thousands of jobs would be lost, but actually we ended up creating more jobs and better prosperity. We don't know. I don't think anybody knows the timing on that. So that's around those sort of digital and financial services sectors. So I think we'll see potentially better, good productivity gains there. The banking sector, I can't comment on because a lot of the profitability of that sector will be based around interest rates and other global economic considerations. I very much hope to see the same in other sectors. I think I mean, the retail sector, for example, was already having a very challenging time pre-COVID, and the lockdown has pushed even more people onto the internet for the acquisition of goods and services. So that's going to make the retailers' challenges even greater moving forward, which could lead to the restructuring of the offering in our town centre. I mean, you and I attended a meeting recently where we had that very discussion of what the town centre and what retail might look like in 5 to 10 years. So that's important work. But I also predict that sector, it might shrink locally, but I think it will become more productive and even more valuable to our economy. So those are just two examples of my albeit potentially subjective view of what the future might look like at the moment. And if any officers or Steve perhaps would like to comment, then you're welcome to, if you would allow that.
Absolutely. The one thing before we go there, one thing I'd say, I also asked about migration, because obviously Jersey's economy has been reliant on quite considerable, significant migration. I think back to, when I was 15 years old, there's about 80,000 people living in the island. 30 years later, there's, let's say, 110,000 people. So that's a very large, kind of 30 to 40% increase in the island's population over 30 years. So do you still believe we'll be relying on a kind of migration-dependent economy moving forward?
Well, I think we probably all know that level of population growth is unsustainable for our small island, which is why the productivity gains are so important, absolutely vital for us to keep our economy and our population sustainable. And that's why education, skills, vocational training, the development of our on-island workforce is absolutely essential. And I think a really good example of that is the startup of the Digital Jersey Academy, which we've got off the ground now. That was started last September, and I understand they're seeing a huge increase in interest and uptake in the courses they're offering. So as we develop our on-island opportunities for on-island training and development of skills, facilities and resources like the Digital Jersey Academy, Highlands College, and perhaps we're looking at the restructuring of the education system, are going to play a really key part in ensuring we can deliver growth from wherever possible our own population. Having said that, there will still always be a need to import skills right across the spectrum, from health workers to teachers and specialist engineers and so on and so forth. But we can't be as reliant on the numbers we've previously had to import. It's not going to be easy, it's going to be a challenge, but we have to be committed to it.
Thank you. I'll carry on. I appreciate you invited others to speak, but just because of time, if that's okay, we'll move on. Quickly changing the subject from economic recovery, would you mind describing the work you're currently undertaking in the department? Which work streams do you have on the go outside of economic recovery? We've got an awful lot of business as usual. So if you look across our areas of responsibility, we're still working closely with Visit Jersey, with the agricultural sector. Particularly interest of priority for the department is the continued progress and development of medicinal pharmaceutical, got there in the end. Cannabis, that's a priority. We are there's some other work going on at the moment in reference to Jersey heritage, and we're working on that with Deputy Tadier and Chris Kelleher, who's with us today. That's about it's about how they might wish to restructure or perhaps look at their constitution because of the need to become a charity to sustain their income, and the charity law has an issue with governance on that. So that's a small but important piece of work we're carrying on. I know Senator Pallett has been extremely busy. He's working on topics from skate parks to sports infrastructure, facilities,
So I'm sure you've got questions for him on the big and very good work he's doing with sport there. Of course, we have Channel Islands lottery considerations, where, as you're aware, we're discussing how we might develop the lottery. We've already stated an intention that we want to spread the contributions from lottery to a to a broader sector of the community. So that's an important piece of work as well. That's just a bit of a flavour of what's going on, but I think that's probably the key areas.
Thank you. Very quickly, before I hand over to Senator Moore, when can we expect to see the retail strategy?
I'm pleased you asked that, because Ian Clarkson is with us now. Ian, can you update on that? It is a priority. We've bought it. We've taken it off the simmer hob and put it back onto boil recently. You'll be pleased to know. So, Ian.
Yes, Chairman, panel, good morning. The position with the retail strategy is that we've produced an interim redraft. You won't need me to tell you that whilst we had a draft retail development strategy that was at the point of broad consultation at the end of February, COVID-19 rather changed the landscape somewhat. In fact, one of the things that it did was rather ram home Scrutiny's recommendation 9 in its 2018 report that you'll remember rather well, around the relative lack of data that we were working with. Not only was COVID-19 having a major impact on retail, but it was perhaps more difficult than it might be for government to assess the rate of change in the dynamics of the market, particularly in St Helier. To cut a long story short, there is now an interim strategy, a draft of which is with the Minister for initial review. It's been through our economics unit for peer review. It's been referred to statistics unit. What we're hoping to do next is get to a point very quickly in August where we can have some consultation with specific stakeholders that were previously heavily and valuably engaged in the retail strategy production through 2017 and 2019, just to make sure that the direction of travel is appropriate, but to outline what the interim strategy is exploring at the moment. It's essentially 4 themes. The first is better sector connectivity with government. One of the themes that's been made very clear to us from retail stakeholders is that they'd like ideally a single point of contact to refer data to us, to engage with, and know that that government has a policy officer that's working with colleagues on the range of strategies and policy development that impacts retail, right through from tax policy to transport. So there's one work stream right there. Second one around securing better data. Now, in the short term, we're looking at things like expanding again the footfall camera network that's currently with the parish of St Helier. So we're looking at working in conjunction with them to get an improved footfall data collection system. In the short term, that is. In the medium to longer term, we're going to be looking at opportunities to perhaps do something more on island based in conjunction with Digital Jersey. So securing better data, second theme. Third one is about expansion of particular operational business support in conjunction with Jersey Business. We're clear that there's a particular short-term need for SMEs to receive greater assistance in digital sales and marketing skills and financial management to help them stay afloat in some unprecedented times. And the last work stream is perhaps going to be looking at the interim or bridging island plan. There seems to be an emerging body of thinking that we might want to look at increasing the flexibility of uses that are permitted in the core retail area of St Helier in particular. Acknowledging that there is some flexibility in the island plan as it currently stands, there does seem to be significant stakeholder comment to the effect that we could perhaps do more to encourage leisure, entertainment and community uses to locate in closer proximity to each other and help sustain the footfall that we're lacking in St Helier.
Thank you. Very quickly, I'm just looking for dates, Minister.